"We'll take this one," my son said, dropping his suitcase in the master bedroom like it had always belonged to him. His wife followed close behind, balancing a paper bag of groceries and a folded bath mat. I stood in the doorway, the keys still in my hand, as if I hadn't quite crossed the threshold myself. I'd only been here 2 weeks. The air still carried that faint, sharp scent of new paint and pine boards settling. I had imagined a slow rhythm coffee at dawn, the sound of wind through the trees, no voices except my own. But instead, there they were filling the silence before I'd even learned to live in it. "This will be good for you," Mom Trent said, over his shoulder, already pulling open drawers. "Company is healthy." Melina smiled, soft but decisive. "Besides, it's just until we figure things out." I wanted to ask what exactly they were figuring out, but I didn't. I watched as she began lining the pantry shelves with neatly written labels. Pasta rice snacks. Her handwriting was tidy and certain, the kind of writing that assumes ownership. I caught sight of her yoga mat rolled out in the corner, her shoes tucked neatly beneath the bench. This wasn't temporary. Trent walked through the cabin, commenting on where things might go. "We could move this chair closer to the window," he said, as if testing how far he could rearrange not just furniture, but the air I'd claimed as mine. I set my purse down on the counter and took out my coffee mug. It was a simple thing, the only piece I'd brought from the city that felt like home. I washed it, dried it, and placed it carefully on the open shelf exactly where I wanted it. Then I turned and looked at them, smiling faintly. "I'll make coffee in the morning," I said. For one, outside the wind brushed against the cabin walls. Inside, I could already feel the space beginning to shrink. They meant well, at least that's what they'd say to anyone who asked. Melina started with the bathroom. She cleared out the top shelf of the medicine cabinet, setting aside my old tin of bandages and a bottle of allergy tablets. In their place went jars with gold lids lined in order of size. Serums, tonics, creams I couldn't pronounce. I found my things in a plastic bag under the sink. Trent ordered a set of chairs online. I saw the confirmation email open on my laptop. He hadn't even bothered to sign out of my account. "We're making it cozy," he said, as 2 oversized boxes arrived on the porch. The chairs were gray and stiff and didn't match the warm wood I'd chosen, but he assembled them anyway, whistling. I nodded, said thank you. The next morning I woke early, tied my boots and walked deep into the trail that ran behind the cabin, past the old pines split by lightning, past the creek that hummed low even in fall. When I got back, the curtains were gone. Melina had taken them down. "Too dark," she said. "We'll find something brighter." I'd seen this before. Years ago, after Arthur died, his cousins dropped by every weekend with suggestions. "Sell the house. Move closer to the city. You don't need that much space," they'd said already, eyeing the guest room for their visits. This cabin wasn't a gift, wasn't a hand-me-down. It was mine. I bought it. Paid in full. No one helped. And it would stay mine. They didn't know it yet, but I had already started taking mental notes. What they touched. What they moved. What they called theirs. A week in, I found a binder on the coffee table. Thick, glossy, too professional to belong in a home that still smelled like fresh varnish. Inside were printed pages, local rental rates, tourist demographics, short-term stay projections. Across one page in pencil was a neat heading, Cabin Summer Airbnb Potential. Daily rate $275. They were making plans. Without me. I flipped through the tabs. A cleaning schedule. Supply lists. Photos of the cabin I hadn't taken. And tucked between the pages, a smaller note in Melina's rounded handwriting. We'll present it to her as a win-win. Emotional arguments won't work. So that was the plan. I was the obstacle, not the owner. I set the binder down and walked outside. The air was thin and sharp. The shed stood at the edge of the clearing, the same one I'd filled with gardening tools and my old trail camera. I used to point it toward the ridge, capturing deer and the occasional fox. Now I turned it toward the porch, just above eye level, half hidden behind the beam. I stood there for a long moment, the quiet pressing in around me. I thought about every favor they'd done for me these past few days, repainting, reorganizing, updating. They were clearing me out bit by bit in the name of improvement. Back inside, I opened my hiking journal, the one with weathered corners and a faded cover. I made a list, not of guests or plans, but of tools. Small, harmless bugs, a shed snakeskin from last spring's garter visitor, a few sulfur matches wrapped in cloth, nothing dangerous, nothing lasting. Just small inconveniences, reminders that peace isn't something you can steal. When I finished writing, I closed the book and ran my hand over the cover. Outside the porch, light flickered as the sun began to fall. By morning, I knew exactly where I'd begin. The first scream came early in the morning. I had just finished pouring my coffee when Melina burst out of the bathroom, holding something between two fingers like it was a ticking bomb. She looked pale, almost gray, as she extended the crumpled length of snakeskin toward Trent. It was under the sink. She gasped, just lying there. Trent turned to me, his mouth half open. "Is this normal up here?" I took a sip from my mug, then glanced toward the hallway. "This is the woods," I said. "They shed near water lines sometimes." "Happens every season." He didn't respond. The next afternoon brought the buzzing. Wasps began circling the porch light, slow and aimless. Nothing aggressive, just present. I'd dripped a little sugar water near the old nest tucked beneath the siding. Enough to attract attention, not enough to keep them for long. Melina refused to sit outside after that. "They dive at my face," she told Trent. He waved her off, but I saw him flinch when one landed on the screen door. The water was next. The kitchen tap let out a faint metallic scent tinged with sulfur. I'd tucked a cloth pouch soaked in match dust just above the filter. Trent twisted the faucet on and off, sniffed twice, then leaned back with a scowl. "Your plumbing needs work." I dried my hands on a dish towel. "There's a good handyman in town." "Local guy." "Reasonable." He nodded, but didn't write the name down. He never asked again. By the end of the week, Melina had started boiling water before brushing her teeth. The windows stayed closed, the porch chairs empty. They spent more time in town, returning later and later each night. And still, I said nothing. Let the land do the talking. Let the air shift. Let the walls breathe. I started sleeping with the door to my room wide open. I knew they wouldn't come in. They stopped sitting on the porch. The chairs Trent had assembled with such pride now sat unused, their cushions untouched, already collecting dust. They stopped cooking, too. The fancy olive oil Melina brought sat unopened beside the stove. The knives were back in their block, untouched since that first week. Melina spent most of her days curled into the corner of the couch hoodie, pulled over her head, earbuds in. She barely looked up when I moved through the room. Trent paced around the kitchen, back and forth through the hallway, sometimes muttering, sometimes silent, but always moving like he couldn't settle. I, meanwhile, found rhythm again. I baked bread in the mornings, wiped down the windows, pruned the blackberry vine growing wild near the ridge trail. I hummed to myself while folding laundry, smiled more than usual. One night, I heard Melina whisper to Trent that she missed coffee shops. He said he missed fast Wi-Fi. Another day, she asked if the water filter was broken. No, I told her. It's well water. Perfectly safe. Just takes getting used to. I didn't add that I'd grown to love it the way it tasted, slightly mineral, like the land itself had left a trace. They both missed showers that didn't smell like matches. I didn't say anything else. Instead, I watched them start leaving more often. Trent mentioned errands, visits to the library, a friend from college passing through town. They were always vague. They returned later each time, their expressions tight, their movements rushed. Slowly, a few things from the guest room began to disappear. A suitcase. Melina's standing mirror. The makeup caddy from the bathroom. I didn't ask. I just folded a clean set of sheets, placed them neatly in the linen closet, and made the bed again. The house was quieter now, but not empty. Not lonely. And then, on a Thursday morning, the porch was still. No movement. Just 2 half-packed suitcases near the door. They left on a Thursday. No warning. No final talk. Just the low scrape of suitcases across the floor, and Melina cradling a potted plant I'd never seen her water. She kept her eyes on the ground as she passed through the living room. I guess this place isn't for us, she said almost to herself. Trent followed behind her. His backpack slung over one shoulder, laptop cord dangling from a side pocket. He paused near the front door, glanced at the hooks where their coats used to hang, then opened his mouth as if to speak. But he didn't say much. Just a tight nod. He didn't meet my eyes. There was no apology. No offer to return the spare key I knew was still in his jacket pocket. But they closed the door gently. I waited a moment, listened to the engine start to tires crunching gravel. I didn't watch them leave, didn't move until long after the sound had faded around the bend. Then I went into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and reached for my mug, the one with the chipped handle still sitting on the shelf where I'd left it. I poured my tea. Still warm. Still my mug. Still mine. There was no shouting. No broken plates, no angry letters. Just space. Space I had carved out for myself, reclaimed without lifting my voice or raising a hand. They left a few things behind: an unopened box of protein bars, a throw blanket folded unevenly on the couch. But the air was different now. Lighter. I sat on the porch that afternoon, the same one they had abandoned weeks ago. No wasps, no sugar water. Just a breeze and the soft creak of the rocking chair beneath me. That night, I opened the guest room door, stripped the bed, shook out the comforter. They forgot a folder in the closet. It had fallen sideways behind a stack of folded towels, the corner slightly bent from being shoved in too quickly. Inside was the same real estate plan I'd found weeks ago, only now it was updated. The rental estimates were higher. The calendar stretched through the holidays, and my name was gone entirely. The headings read, Owner's Unit and Guest Turnover Schedule, as if I'd never existed. I flipped through each page slowly. There were scribbled notes in Trent's handwriting, a cost breakdown, even projected taxes. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't curiosity. It was intent. I didn't shred it. Didn't burn it. I placed the folder in the bottom drawer of the old desk in my bedroom, beneath a stack of seed catalogs and a worn trail map. Let it live there, quiet, harmless, irrelevant. A week later, I got an email. Subject checking in. Hey, Mom, it read, just making sure everything's good. Hope the cabin's not too lonely without us. No mention of the folder. No mention of the key they hadn't returned. I read it twice, then forwarded it to my lawyer. She wrote back within the hour. Documented. That was all. I didn't reply to Trent. Didn't take the bait, but I saved the email. Just in case they ever came back with questions. Or claims. Or anything dressed up as concern, but threaded with control. They might have drawn up a future with my home at the center of it, rented out, managed by them, stripped of what I built it for. But that future wasn't real. I had stayed. They hadn't. Later that afternoon, I replaced the batteries in the trail cam. The porch was empty now, still in the lens. The cabin had grown quiet in the best way, and I had a mailbox to change. I ordered the new mailbox plaque the day after I saved Trent's email. Dahlia West. No initials. No hyphenated names. No hints of shared space or future co-owners. Just me. When the delivery arrived, I opened the box carefully, and ran my fingers over the engraved letters. Black text on brushed metal, simple, quiet, final. I installed it myself. Then I came inside and cleaned the last coffee ring off the dining table. The one that had been sitting there since Trent left his mug and forgot about it. I used lemon and baking soda scrubbing slow until the circle vanished like it had never happened. I pushed the second chair back under the window, the one where I liked to read in the late afternoon. It fit better there out of the way, like it had been waiting to return to that spot. After lunch, I stood at the edge of the porch and took a photo of the cabin. The front door, the chairs, the view down the hill where the gravel met the tree line. Finally, empty. No yoga mats by the wall. No hiking boots I didn't recognize. No unfamiliar car keys on the hook. I printed the photo and taped it inside the pantry door. It wasn't sentimental. It was a reminder. They didn't take it. I kept it. That night, I sat outside with a blanket and watched the porch light flicker. Once then, stay steady. There were no wasps now. No sugar water. No sulfur in the pipes. The air smelled like pine and early frost. I stayed out until the breeze cooled. When I stepped back inside, I locked the door behind me. Not because I was afraid, just because I could. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear much. One missed call from Trent. A short text 2 days later. Thinking of you. I let them sit untouched in my inbox. No reply, no read receipt. There was nothing left to say, but mostly it was quiet. The kind of quiet that had once made me restless. The kind that used to echo too loudly after Arthur died, where every creak board and ticking clock felt like a reminder of what was gone. Now, it felt different. I walked the ridge trail each morning, boots crunching softly over frost-dusted leaves. I carried a thermos in my pack and stopped at the flat rock halfway through, the one that overlooked the valley where the line between sky and tree always blurred. That's where I started sketching again. At first, just outlines, branches, shadows, the edge of my boot resting against the stone. Then one day, I drew the cabin. Not as it was, but as I wanted to remember it. Still, whole, untouched. I came home tired in the best way, arms, sore cheeks flushed from the wind. I'd open the windows in the afternoons, let the breeze move through the rooms. No artificial sounds. Just wind through the screens, the rattle of dry leaves, the quiet groan of settling wood. At night, I read aloud to myself, not to fill the silence, but to honor it. I didn't wonder where they were. Didn't check social media. Didn't ask around town. I knew what I needed to know. They were gone. And in their place, nothing. Not regret. Not rage. Just space. One morning, I stood by the gate and noticed the rust on the latch. It squeaked, then caught. It was time to fix it. So I drove into town, bought a new lock, and on the way back, picked up a small wooden board and carving tools I hadn't touched in years. I knew exactly what I wanted to make. I replaced the gate latch first. The old one had rusted just enough to catch at the wrong angle, like it was hesitating. The new one clicked firmly into place. No squeak, no protest. Just certainty. Then I changed the locks on the cabin doors. Not out of fear, just clarity. I didn't want to wonder who still had copies, or what they might think they were entitled to. The new keys felt solid in my palm, cool and smooth and final. That afternoon, I sat at the workbench in the shed and carved the sign, "Welcome to my quiet." Each letter took time. I traced them slowly, letting the words sink in as I worked. When I finished, I sealed the wood, drilled the holes, and hung it just below the gate handle. It wasn't a warning. It was a boundary. The cabin stands as it should. No screaming in the hallway. No slammed doors. No hurried voices trying to make decisions that were never theirs to make. Just wind through the trees and the steady sound of the creek returning to its rhythm. They never came back. No surprise visits. No long apologies. No claims or second chances. But even if they did, they'd find the gate closed. They'd find no one waiting, no space made ready. They'd find that I had stayed, not just in the cabin, but in myself. No more explaining. No more negotiating my peace. Inside, I put the spare key in the drawer next to the matches and the trail maps. Not hidden, just placed where it belongs. A key that fits, a lock that turns, and a door that only opens when I choose.